My husband and I were touring a condo. Watching Kevin speak German with the foreign-born seller's agent, I remained silent the entire time, pretending I didn't understand a word, but then I overheard a sentence that stunned me. So much so, I could hardly believe my own ears. That afternoon, a pale yellow sunlight streamed into the newly constructed condominium building in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The light poured through massive floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting off the polished hardwood floors and making the entire hallway seem as if it were coated in a layer of warm honey. I stood in the middle of the living room of the unit we were viewing. The condo was spacious, over 1,500 square feet, with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. The balcony overlooked a small park. Down below, the maple trees were just beginning to turn, their leaves a brilliant mix of gold and crimson. A gentle breeze rustled through them, creating a soft, whispering sound, a picture of perfect autumn tranquility. My husband, Kevin, stood by the window. He feigned a knowledgeable air, pacing back and forth, running his hand over a wall here, knocking on a kitchen cabinet there, acting as though he were an expert in real estate. I looked at him and couldn't help but feel a flicker of amusement. To be honest, Kevin knew next to nothing about property. For the past few years, if it hadn't been for the inheritance from my side of the family, Sampi with just his salary as a software engineer, we'd be lucky to afford a small 2-bedroom in a suburb like Waltham, let alone a place this expansive in Cambridge. The agent showing us the condo was a foreign woman in her 50s. Her name was Helga, and she represented the German owner. She wore a charcoal gray pantsuit, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, her every gesture exuding professionalism. She was currently speaking to Kevin in German. Kevin nodded along continuously. To an outsider, his expression suggested he understood everything. But I knew better. Kevin had spent less than 3 years on assignment in Germany. His German was good enough to order food in a restaurant and ask for directions, and that was about it. If he understood 30% of this real estate jargon, it would be a miracle. I, on the other hand, was different. I understood every word, but I said nothing. I just walked slowly around the unit, pretending not to be listening. Helga's German was crisp and clear. She explained that the building was originally built in 1990, but this unit had been completely gutted and renovated 3 years ago. It had new triple-pane, insulated windows, and an independent heating system. The owner was a retired professor who was moving back to his hometown and wanted a quick sale. The asking price was around $1.05 million, nearly $150,000 below market value. Kevin had been obsessed with this listing for 2 weeks. Every day, he'd bring it up. Its great location near the schools, how convenient it would be for our daughter later, how a price like this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity we'd regret missing. I knew Kevin's urgency wasn't entirely his own. Behind him, undoubtedly, was my mother-in-law, Brenda. What kind of person was Brenda? Honestly, from the day I first set foot in their family, I'd never known a moment of peace. First, she criticized me for not having a degree from an Ivy League school. Then, she complained about my low-paying job in marketing. After that, it was about me giving birth to a daughter. Basically, no matter what I did, she found fault. And Kevin? He was the classic example of a man who believed mom is always right. He never once dared to talk back to her. "So, what do you think of this place, Maya?" Kevin turned and asked me in English. Helga also looked toward me, offering a polite smile. "I know what you're probably thinking about our relationship. After years of living abroad as an expat wife, I'd seen that look many times." I gave a short reply. "It's okay." Kevin's brow furrowed. "Just okay? This is $1 million decision, Maya. Not buying vegetables at the farmer's market." I didn't answer. I walked over to the window and ran my hand along the frame to check it. The aluminum frame was solid, but the rubber seals were a bit worn, though still functional. Kevin would never notice details like these. He only cared about 3 things. Was the place big? Was it bright? Was the decor nice? Helga suddenly switched to English with me, probably assuming it was the only language I knew. The windows were replaced 3 years ago. They're triple pane for insulation. I nodded, replying in English. I can tell. Kevin, standing beside me, looked slightly annoyed. He never liked it when my English was more fluent than his. But he had no idea that my German was even better than my English. Before we moved to Germany, I had studied the language for a year and then continued to teach myself. I just never told him. There are some things a woman just needs to know for herself, without having to say them out loud. Helga led us into the kitchen. It was quite large. All the cabinetry was imported. The induction cooktop, wall oven, and dishwasher were all high-end German brands. I opened the refrigerator. It was empty. The owner had already moved out. I asked Helga, "Which of these appliances are included in the sale?" Helga looked a little surprised, likely not expecting such a specific question from me. She consulted a document and said, "The refrigerator, washer, and dryer are all staying. The entire set of kitchen cabinets and built-in appliances are also part of the sale price." I nodded, then pointed to the radiator on the wall. "Is the heating system shared with the building, or is it private to the unit?" Helga answered immediately. "It's private. The boiler was replaced just last year." Her gaze toward me had changed. It seemed she was realizing that I understood more about the condo than my husband did. Kevin's discomfort grew. He cleared his throat. "Why are you asking so many questions? She already told us all this." I didn't respond. I continued on to the master bedroom. It was spacious, with an ensuite bathroom. I turned on the faucet to test it. The water pressure was strong, and the hot water came on quickly. I turned back. "This place is fine," Kevin sighed. "Are you done yet?" "She's waiting for us." I looked at him and said coolly, "We're spending $1 million. Don't you think we should look carefully?" Kevin was speechless. Helga, standing in the living room, politely pretended to check her phone to give us a moment of privacy. I went to see the other 2 rooms. One, a smaller north-facing room, would be perfect for my daughter. The other faced east, had a small balcony, and got excellent morning light. Honestly, I really liked the condo. When I returned to the living room, Helga was talking to Kevin about payment methods. Kevin's English started to sound clumsy. I stepped forward. "Let me," Helga smiled. "Your English is very good." Kevin gave a forced laugh. I asked Helga a few more questions about the legal paperwork, the HOA fees, and the schools in the area. We talked for about 10 minutes, and Helga became more and more enthusiastic. Just then, the doorbell rang. Helga went to open it. A woman in her 60s walked in, with silver hair and a dark green knit sweater. When I saw her, my heart stopped. It was my mother-in-law, Brenda. She walked in as if she owned the place, exchanged a few words in broken German with Helga, and went straight to Kevin. Kevin was also surprised. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Brenda glared at him. "This is a huge decision. You think I wouldn't come to see it for myself?" They were speaking English, so Helga stood by, waiting. I pretended not to care, sitting down on the sofa and pulling out my phone, but my ears were listening intently. Brenda pulled Kevin into a corner of the room, about 30 feet away. Thinking I didn't understand German, they spoke freely. But they didn't know. I heard every single word. "So? Did she agree to buy it yet?" Brenda asked. "Not yet. She keeps asking endless questions," Kevin replied, his voice tinged with annoyance. Brenda let out a cold laugh. "What's there to ask? It's not her money, anyway." I clenched my phone tightly. Brenda continued, "We absolutely have to buy this place, but it has to be in your name." Kevin lowered his voice. "But the money is from her inheritance." Brenda scoffed. "Her money is your money. That money came from her uncle. If she hadn't married you, do you think she would have gotten it?" Hearing that, my entire body went cold. But it was Brenda's next sentence that truly stunned me. She spoke quietly, but with crystal clarity. "After the house is bought, you find a way to move all the money into my account. After that, you can divorce her whenever you want." My ears were ringing. I couldn't believe it. The man I called my husband, the woman I called my mother-in-law, were standing 30 feet away from me, plotting how to take every last cent I had. I lowered my head, staring at my phone, but my finger had silently opened the voice recorder app, and in that instant, I knew my 5-year marriage had just taken a completely different turn. I remained seated on the sofa, phone in hand, my eyes fixed on the screen as if I were reading the news. But in reality, every nerve in my body was stretched taut. The phone rested on my lap, the voice recorder active, its tiny red light blinking. In the corner of the room, 30 feet away, my mother-in-law, Brenda, was still talking to Kevin in German. "You have to listen to me," she said, her voice low but distinct. "The house in your name, then transfer the money to my account. That's the only way to be sure." Kevin was silent for a moment, his voice hesitant when he finally spoke. "But what if she finds out?" Brenda sneered. "Find out what? She doesn't understand a word of German." I heard that, and my heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. Brenda went on, her voice dripping with calculation. "You just tell her the law here requires a few extra papers. Once she signs them, this house is yours. If anything happens later, she won't be able to get a dime." Kevin still hesitated. "But Maya is still my wife." Brenda immediately snapped back. "So what if she's your wife? A wife should know to listen to her husband. I'm telling you, Kevin, I can see right through that girl. She acts all quiet, but her mind is always calculating." I bit my lips so hard I could taste blood. I had heard those words for years. Brenda had never liked me. The very first day I met her, she had said it to her relatives' faces. "This girl looks meek, but she's not simple." Back then I was young and naive, believing that if I just lived well, I would eventually be accepted. But now, hearing those words again, I finally understood. Some people will never see you as family, no matter what you do. In the corner, Kevin was still listening to his mother. "You have to think about your future," Brenda said. "If that money stays in her hands, it'll be gone sooner or later. It needs to be moved where I can keep it safe for you," Kevin asked quietly. "How would I move it?" Brenda answered instantly. "After you buy the house, you tell her you need more money for renovations. Have her transfer it to your account, then you transfer it to me. Bit by bit, drain it all." Hearing that, my hand unconsciously clenched into a fist, my nails digging into my palm. Brenda continued, "If she behaves herself later, you can let her stay. But if she causes any trouble, just divorce her. By then, the money and the house will be on our side. She won't be able to do a thing." Kevin was silent. A moment later, he said softly, "I understand." Just 2 words. But those 2 words were like a knife stabbing straight into my heart. 5 years of marriage, a 4-year-old daughter, all of it seemed to be worth less than the money in my bank account. I sat perfectly still, not looking up, not looking at them, but tears had started to well in my eyes. I quickly swallowed them down. I couldn't cry. If I cried now, it would all be over, and I wasn't ready for it to be over. Not yet. Just then, Helga walked back into the living room from the hallway. She smiled and asked in English, "So, how do you two feel about the condo?" Kevin and Brenda immediately turned around. Kevin tried to act normal. "We quite like it." Helga looked at me. "And you, ma'am?" I turned off the recorder, slipped the phone into my pocket, and stood up. "The condo is very nice." Helga smiled. "The owner wants a quick sale. So the price is quite good." Brenda immediately cut in, speaking broken English. "We want to buy." I turned my head to look at her, my gaze perfectly calm. "I think we should see a few more places." Brenda's brow instantly creased. "See what else?" "This one is perfect." I maintained a gentle tone. "It's $1 million house, Brenda. It doesn't hurt to be a little more careful." Kevin looked at me, his eyes showing a hint of annoyance. "Maya, don't complicate things." I looked him straight in the eye. I just want to be sure. The atmosphere in the room suddenly grew tense. Helga seemed to sense it and said, "That's quite all right. Buying a home is a major decision. It's normal to think it over." Brenda, though displeased, said nothing more. We left the condo around 4 p.m. Down in the parking garage, a blast of cold wind hit me, clearing my head completely. Kevin drove, and I sat in the passenger seat. Brenda sat in the back. The car was silent for a full 10 minutes. Finally, Brenda spoke up. "Maya, do you really think that Condo isn't good?" I looked out the window. "It's not that. Then why are you hesitating?" I turned my head and offered a faint smile. "I just want to look at a few more to be certain." Brenda huffed. "Girls these days are so difficult." Kevin didn't say anything, but I saw his hands tighten on the steering wheel. The car stopped in front of our apartment building. Brenda got out first. Kevin and I went up to our unit. As soon as we walked through the door, he asked, "What was wrong with you today?" I took off my shoes, calmly replying, "What do you mean? What was wrong? You're not usually this stubborn." I turned to face him. "Stubborn? Yeah. Mom already said she liked the place." I burst out laughing. "So, are we buying this house for your mother to live in? Or for us?" Kevin was taken aback. After a moment, he said, "You know that's not what I meant." I didn't answer him. I walked straight into the kitchen. My daughter, Lily, was at the table, drawing. Seeing me, she ran over and hugged my leg. "Mommy, where did you go?" I bent down and hugged her. "Mommy went to see a house." "A new house?" She beamed. "I want a house with a balcony. I can plant flowers." Hearing her words, my heart ached. The condo we had just seen had a beautiful balcony. If things had been different, we could have had a very happy home there. But now I knew that house would never be ours. That evening, I barely spoke to Kevin. He didn't try to initiate a conversation either. After our daughter was asleep, he lay in bed scrolling through his phone. I pretended to read a book. Around 11 p.m., Kevin fell asleep, his snores soft and even. I put my book down and picked up my phone. I replayed the recording. The room was dark, with only the light from the phone screen illuminating my face. Brenda's voice came through, crystal clear. "After the house is bought, move the money to my account. Then you can divorce her without any worries." I listened to the entire thing, not missing a single word. When the recording finished, I sat in silence for a long time. 5 years ago, on our wedding day, Kevin had held my hand and said, "Maya, from now on, I will always protect you." I had believed him. I believed him so much that I left a stable job to follow him to Germany. I believed him so much that I put the entire inheritance from my uncle into our joint account. I believed him so much that I thought if I just endured, our family would be peaceful. Thinking back on it now, I was so naive. I glanced over at Kevin. He was still fast asleep, his face peaceful, as if nothing had happened. Suddenly, this man felt like a stranger. Terrifyingly so. But then, another thought entered my mind. If they were going to play this game of deception, why shouldn't I let them continue? I looked at my phone. The recording was still there. Evidence. Crucial evidence. I took a deep breath, hit the save button, and then emailed the audio file to myself. Next, I uploaded another copy to my private cloud storage. 3 places, 3 copies. If anything happened, this recording would still exist. I turned off my phone and lay down, staring at the ceiling. The pain in my heart was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp calm. Kevin and his mother thought I was clueless. They thought I would easily sign the papers. They thought I would obediently hand over the money. They thought I was a lamb, but they didn't know that a lamb, when cornered, can learn to bite back. I turned slightly to look at Kevin. In the darkness, his face was still peaceful. I whispered, so quietly that only I could hear, "You want to play games, Kevin? Fine. I'll play with you. But this time, I make the rules. That night, I barely slept. Beside me, Kevin slept soundly, his steady breathing filling the dark room. I lay with my back to him, my eyes wide open, staring into the blackness. The feeling in my heart was no longer pain, but a sharp clarity. Years ago, I'd read a quote: "The most dangerous person is not the one who is angry, but the one who is calm." Right now, I was calm. So calm, when it was chilling, even to myself. I replayed every word Brenda and Kevin had said in the condo that afternoon. Each sentence was a piece of a puzzle. Assembling them, I saw their plan with perfect clarity. First, buy the condo. Then, make me sign a document waiving my ownership rights. Next, gradually transfer the money from our joint account to Brenda's. Finally, if anything went wrong, they would divorce me. At that point, I'd be left with nothing. I let out a soft, silent laugh. If this had been the me of 5 years ago, that plan might have actually worked. But I was no longer that naive girl. Around 2 a.m., I quietly got out of bed. I went to the living room and opened my laptop. The pale blue light of the screen illuminated my face. I logged into our bank account. Our joint checking and savings, the balance showed just over $320,000. This was our combined savings over the years, a large portion of which was the initial sum from my uncle's inheritance. I stared at the number for a long time, then opened my own personal savings account. The balance there was about $270,000. I had never told Kevin the exact amount of the inheritance. He knew my uncle had left me money, but he didn't know how much, nor that I had split it between 2 accounts. At the time, I had done it simply out of a habit of being cautious. I never imagined it would become my most critical line of defense. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a few minutes. A plan began to form in my mind. Not for revenge. I wasn't interested in revenge. I just wanted to protect what was mine and, more importantly, protect my daughter. The next morning, I woke up early as usual. I made oatmeal for Lily and coffee for Kevin. When Kevin emerged from the bedroom, I was already setting a bowl of oatmeal in front of our daughter. He looked at me for a few seconds, probably trying to see if I was acting any differently. But I was just like any other day. "Do you want breakfast?" I asked. "Yeah." He sat down at the table. Brenda also came out of the guest room. She had stayed over last night. The moment she sat down, she asked, "Maya, have you thought it over?" I placed a cup of coffee in front of her. "Yes, I have." Brenda immediately pressed. "And?" I sat down. "I think the condo we saw yesterday is fine." Both Kevin's and Brenda's eyes lit up. Brenda said at once, "See? I told you so," I continued. "But I'd still like to see it one more time." Brenda frowned slightly. "What for?" I smiled. "It's a huge purchase. I just want to look over every room carefully." Kevin looked at me for a moment, then said, "Okay, I'll make an appointment with Helga for this afternoon." I nodded. Inwardly, I knew they were getting impatient. The more impatient they were, the more likely they were to make mistakes. That afternoon, we went to the condo again. Helga greeted us at the door, as polite as ever. I walked slowly through the unit, examining every corner, every wall, the balcony, the kitchen, the bedrooms. I acted as if I were in deep thought. In reality, I was just stalling. Finally, I returned to the living room. "I think it's good," I said. Brenda almost clapped her hands. "Then let's make an offer." Kevin also let out a sigh of relief. Helga smiled. "Excellent. We can proceed with the next steps." She produced a folder of documents. First is the earnest money deposit. Kevin turned to me. "Maya, can you transfer the deposit?" I nodded. "Sure." I opened my phone and transferred $20,000. Helga received the notification. She shook our hands. "Congratulations to you both." Brenda was beaming. "Thank you." I looked at her. A strange feeling washed over me. A woman who had lived for over 60 years. She should have understood that money can buy many things, but it can't buy a person's heart. Leaving the condo, Brenda was visibly elated. In the car, she talked nonstop. Kevin, see? I was right. Buying that place now, it's sure to appreciate in value. We've practically made $100,000 already. Kevin nodded. He was happy too. Only I was silent. I stared out the window. The afternoon was fading into evening, and the streetlights were beginning to flicker on. My face was reflected in the car window. My expression so calm, it was almost frightening. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Kevin sat down next to me. Maya. Thank you. I looked at him. For what? For agreeing to buy the house. I gave a small smile. It's our house. Kevin seemed a bit embarrassed. He reached out and took my hand. We're going to have a better life now. I looked at his hand, and his words from the recording echoed in my mind. I understand. Just those 2 words were enough to shatter everything. I gently pulled my hand away. I'm going to bed. I stood up, went to my room, and closed the door. Then I took out my phone and replayed the recording. I listened to it again, not missing a word. Then I opened my email and sent another copy to my uncle back in my hometown. In the email, I wrote a short message. Uncle Jack, please keep this recording safe for me, just in case I need it. After that, I shut down my phone and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Kevin hadn't come into the room yet. I knew he was texting, probably with his mother or a lawyer. They were likely planning their next move, but they didn't know that this game was no longer following their script. I closed my eyes, a final thought crystallizing in my mind. They think I'm walking into a trap they've set, but in reality, they're the ones walking into mine. And this time, I had decided I was not going to lose. After the day we put down the deposit on the condo, the atmosphere in our apartment shifted noticeably. My mother-in-law, Brenda, was openly cheerful. She stayed with us for a few more days, waking up early every morning, making tea while talking about the new place. You're going to love it there, Maya, she'd say. That balcony is so big. It'll be perfect for flowers. I would listen and nod. But inside, I knew with perfect clarity. In her plan, that house was never meant for me. Kevin also seemed more relaxed. He spoke to me more gently these past few days and even offered to help with the dishes twice. In the past, I might have been touched, but now I viewed it all with a strange detachment, like watching a play where I was the only one who knew the ending. 3 days later, Helga called. We need to meet with the attorneys to sign the initial paperwork. Kevin was delighted to hear this. He immediately told me, Maya, we're signing the purchase agreement next week. I nodded. Okay. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Kevin sat next to me on the sofa. He scrolled through his phone a few times before speaking. Maya, the lawyer said we need to prepare some documents. I turned to look at him. What kind of documents? Kevin hesitated slightly. It's just a formality. There are a few papers that need to be signed beforehand. I feigned surprise. What papers need to be signed in advance? He scratched his head. It's like a financial confirmation for the bank. I looked at him for a few seconds. In the dim light of the living room, Kevin's face looked a little tense. He was a terrible liar. I had known that for a long time. I smiled faintly. All right, when do we sign? Kevin seemed to let out a breath of relief. Monday. I nodded. Okay. The conversation ended quickly. But as Kevin turned away, I saw him discreetly sigh. I knew why. He thought he had just cleared a hurdle, but he didn't know the real test was still ahead. That night, after Kevin was asleep, I opened my laptop again. I logged into our bank account. The joint account still had over $300,000. I stared at the number for a long time. Then I opened the transaction history. Over the past 2 years, Kevin had made numerous transfers, none of them very large, usually around $2,000 or $3,000 at a time. I hadn't paid much attention before, assuming they were for various expenses. But looking at them now, I noticed something. All the transfers went to the same account. I frowned and clicked on the details. The recipient's name appeared. Brenda Miller. I let out a soft, mirthless laugh. So, this hadn't just started. Kevin had been sending money to his mother for a long time. Brenda was probably the one holding the family purse strings. I closed the laptop, no longer feeling angry, only a profound coldness. The next morning, I called my uncle. He answered quickly. Maya? Hi, Uncle Jack. It's me. My uncle was the only close family I had left. After my parents passed away when I was young, he was the one who raised me and put me through college. When I married Kevin and moved abroad, he gave me a substantial amount of money. A woman needs to have her own money. For security, he had told me. At the time, I thought he was being overly cautious. Now I understood. He saw the world much more clearly than I did. How are you doing, kiddo? He asked. I'm okay. I paused for a moment, then continued. Uncle Jack, if I run into some trouble later on, will you help me? There was a silence on the other end of the line for a few seconds. Then he said, very slowly, You're saying that because something is already wrong, aren't you? I didn't answer directly. Maybe, he sighed. Maya, remember one thing. The money I gave you is your money, not your husband's. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I know, he continued. If anything happens, you tell me. As long as I'm alive, I'll have your back. Hearing that, a lump formed in my throat. For so many years, I had tried to be strong on my own, but just one simple sentence was enough to make me want to cry. I took a deep breath. Don't worry, Uncle Jack. I can handle this. After hanging up, I felt a renewed sense of strength. At least I wasn't alone. The next few days passed quickly. Monday arrived the day of the signing. We went to the lawyer's office in the morning. It was in a small brick building downtown. The lawyer was a German-American man in his 40s. He shook our hands. Hello. Kevin sat beside me. Brenda sat across from us. The lawyer brought out a thick stack of papers and began to explain them in German. Kevin nodded along, as did Brenda. As for me, I was silent. I heard every word. The lawyer talked about the purchase and sale agreement, the deposit, the payment schedule, all of it was standard. But then, he took out a separate single-page document. I saw the title immediately. Waiver of Property Interest. My heart skipped a beat. The lawyer turned to Kevin. If your wife signs this, it will simplify the purchasing process. Kevin nodded. He turned to me. Maya. I took the paper and glanced over it. Everything was exactly as I had overheard that day. If I signed this, the condo would belong solely to Kevin, with no legal connection to me. Brenda stared at me. Her eyes filled with anticipation. The room was silent. I placed the paper on the table and smiled. Okay. Kevin immediately handed me a pen. Sign right here. I took the pen, its tip touching the paper. But just as I was about to write, I stopped. I looked up at the lawyer. Excuse me, I have a question. The lawyer nodded. Of course. I spoke very calmly. In the event of a divorce, this property would belong entirely to my husband. Correct? The lawyer replied. That is correct. I turned to Kevin. Are you sure you want it this way? Kevin looked slightly surprised. It's just a formality, Maya. I looked him straight in the eyes. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then I smiled. All right, I'll sign. My signature appeared on the paper. Brenda let out a sigh of relief. Kevin smiled too. But they didn't know. The moment my pen touched that paper, I was certain of one thing. The game had officially begun. After I finished signing the document, the tension in the lawyer's office seemed to evaporate. The first person to visibly relax was Brenda. I saw it clearly. Her shoulders dropped, and the corner of her mouth twitched into a small, triumphant smile, as if a major obstacle had just been removed. Kevin smiled too. A bit awkwardly, but it was a smile nonetheless. Only I wasn't smiling. I set the pen down and pushed the document back toward the lawyer. He reviewed the signature and nodded. Very well. Now we can proceed to the next step. Kevin immediately asked, "How long until closing?" "About a month." Kevin glanced at his mother. Brenda gave a slight, satisfied nod. I watched them, their eyes filled with contentment. They probably thought everything was now securely in their hands. I stood up. "Let's go home." On the way back, the atmosphere in the car was completely different. Brenda talked nonstop. "Kevin, see? I told you. Buying that condo was a stroke of luck. That area is going to be worth so much more in a few years." Kevin, driving, nodded along. "I know, Mom." I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window. The city streets were busy with afternoon traffic. The trees lining the road were beginning to lose their leaves. I remembered when I first came to this country. Kevin used to hold my hand as we walked down this very street. Back then, he told me, "One day, we'll have a beautiful home of our own." I had believed him. I believed him so much that I left everything behind to follow him. But thinking about it now, perhaps that dream had only ever existed in my mind. When we got home, Brenda was still buzzing with excitement. As soon as she walked in, she said, "Maya, go make some tea." I nodded. "Okay." From the kitchen, I could hear her speaking to Kevin in the living room. Her voice was low, but I heard every word. "You see? She's easy to handle." Kevin didn't reply. Brenda continued, "Now that the house is in your name, we have to move on to the next step quickly." "What's that?" Kevin asked. "Moving the money," she said decisively. "There's still over $300,000 in your joint account, right?" My heart gave a little jolt. I stood still in the kitchen, holding the teapot. Brenda went on, "You tell her to transfer it to your account. Say it's to pay the seller. Then you transfer it to me to hold on to." Kevin was silent. After a moment, he asked quietly, "Is that a good idea?" Brenda immediately snapped. "Don't you get soft now. If that money stays in her hands, you won't see a cent of it later." "Listen to me," Kevin sighed. "I know, Mom." I stood in the kitchen, a chill spreading through me. Everything was just as I'd predicted. They had no intention of stopping. The paper I signed today was just the beginning. I brought the tray of tea into the living room. They immediately fell silent. I set the tea down on the coffee table. "Here you go, Brenda." She smiled. "Thank you." Looking at that smile, I suddenly understood something. When people have already decided you're an outsider, no matter what you do, they will never change their minds. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Kevin sat down next to me. He seemed a bit hesitant. "Maya, I need to talk to you." I closed my book. "Go ahead." Kevin sat up straighter. "The seller is requesting the payment sooner than expected." I looked at him. "How much?" "About $300,000. I pretended to think. "We have enough in the joint account." Kevin nodded. "We do. But the lawyer said it's best to transfer it to my personal account first. Then I can make the payment to the seller from there." I asked, very naturally, "Why?" Kevin looked a little flustered. "Because the house is in my name." I was silent for a few seconds. Brenda's words echoed in my head. "Transfer it to me to hold on to." I looked at Kevin. He was trying to maintain a calm expression, but I could see his eyes avoiding mine. I smiled faintly. "Okay." Kevin looked up. "Really?" "Yes," I said softly. Hearing that, the tension in Kevin's face immediately eased. He took my hand. "Maya, don't worry. That house will be ours." I nodded. "I know, but in my heart, I thought, no. I never considered that house to be mine." After Kevin went to take a shower, I opened my phone and logged into our bank. The joint account showed $320,000. I looked at the number, then opened the transfer screen, but I didn't transfer it to him. Instead, I transferred $290,000 to my own personal savings account, leaving $30,000 behind. Once the transaction was complete, I let out a slow breath. I knew I had just done something crucial. The $30,000 was enough to make them believe the money was still there, but the bulk of it was now in a place they couldn't touch. I turned off my phone and sat in silence for a moment. I felt no guilt, because that money was, fundamentally, mine. A little while later, Kevin came out of the bathroom, toweling his hair. "Maya, did you transfer the money?" I nodded. "I did." "How much?" "Sanwen. Kevin froze. 30? I looked at him. "I moved the rest to my personal account, just in case we need it for something." Kevin frowned. "Maya, I think it's better to keep it all in the joint account." I smiled. "It's fine. I'll transfer more tomorrow." Hearing that, Kevin seemed to relax and nodded. "Okay." He didn't ask any more questions, but I saw him immediately pick up his phone. He was definitely texting his mother. I didn't need to see it to know. I stood up. "I'm going to bed." I walked into the bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. A moment later, I heard Kevin talking quietly in the living room. Undoubtedly with Brenda on the phone. I didn't need to hear the words clearly. I already knew what they were saying. Brenda was probably getting impatient, planning her next move, but they didn't know. While they thought they were in control of everything, I was already one step ahead. I lay down, staring at the ceiling, and a picture of Lily formed in my mind. She was only 4 years old. Every night before bed, she would ask me, "Mommy, will our new house be big?" I always answered, "Yes." But tonight, I understood something else. A big house doesn't matter as much as a safe one. And if I wasn't strong, my daughter would grow up in a family full of deceit. I closed my eyes and told myself, "Don't get soft, Maya. You have to win this game." I slept very late that night, not out of anxiety, but because my mind was busy calculating. $30,000 remained in the joint account. $290,000 was now in my personal one. If Kevin checked, he would see the money was still there. As long as I said I hadn't transferred it all yet, he wouldn't have a reason to be immediately suspicious. But I knew one thing for certain. Brenda would not be patient. Once her mind was set on the money, she wouldn't wait long. Sure enough, the next morning, just as I was finishing up breakfast preparations, Brenda brought it up. She put her bowl down on the table and looked at me. "Maya, did you transfer the money yesterday?" I answered calmly. "Yes, I did." "How much?" "Sanwen. Brenda's brow immediately furrowed. "That's all?" I gave a faint smile. "I kept a little back, just in case." Brenda looked at Kevin. "Didn't you tell her to transfer all of it?" Kevin looked a bit uncomfortable. He turned to me. "Maya, it would be more convenient if you transferred the full amount." I maintained my gentle tone. "It's fine, Kevin. The seller doesn't need it urgently," Brenda huffed. "Financial matters need to be clear. It's not good for a woman to hold on to too much money." That comment almost made me laugh, but I held it in. "I understand," Brenda continued. "Maya, transfer the rest this afternoon." I nodded. "Okay." I spoke calmly, but inside, I knew. They were getting anxious. After breakfast, Kevin left for work. Brenda stayed home with me. She sat in the living room watching TV, but every so often she would glance my way, as if she were keeping watch. I pretended not to notice. I took Lily to preschool. On the way, she held my hand. "Mommy?" "Yes, honey." "When are we moving to the new house?" I looked at my daughter, her eyes shining with excitement. I gently stroked her hair. "It might be a while. I want a balcony. I'm going to plant flowers." Hearing her, my heart softened. I didn't know if we would ever move into that condo, but I knew one thing. Wherever we lived, I had to protect her. After dropping Lily off, I didn't go straight home. I went directly to the bank. Sitting at the teller's window, I told the staff, "I'd like to change some settings on my account." The bank employee smiled. "How can I help you?" "Our joint checking account, I'd like to set a daily transfer limit." The young woman typed on her computer. "What limit would you like to set?" "A maximum of $1,000 per transaction." "Certainly." I knew this was a critical step. If Kevin tried to transfer a large sum without my authorization, he wouldn't be able to. After finishing at the bank, I left. The air outside was crisp, and an early winter wind blew, clearing my head. I stood on the sidewalk for a few minutes, watching the people go by. A thought crossed my mind. If I hadn't understood German that day, I would probably be happily preparing to move right now, completely unaware of the cruel plan unfolding behind my back. I returned home. Brenda was still in the living room. Seeing me walk in, she immediately asked, "Did you transfer the money?" I took off my coat. "Not yet, Brenda." "Why not?" "I was busy." Brenda stared at me, her eyes no longer holding the fake warmth from before. "Maya, you don't trust me, do you?" I was surprised. "I never said that." Brenda crossed her arms. "Then why haven't you transferred the money?" I sighed softly. "Brenda, I never said I wouldn't. I just wanted to hold on to a little." She gave a cold laugh. "It's not good for a woman to hold on to too much money." I looked at her. "Brenda!" "Most of that money came from my uncle's inheritance." The room fell silent. Brenda stared at me for a few seconds, then said, "You're married now. Your money is family money." That sentence reminded me of what she'd said at the condo. She had said something very similar. I nodded. "I understand. But in my heart, I thought, family? If you truly saw me as family, you wouldn't be scheming like this." That evening, Kevin came home. The first thing he said as he walked in was, "Maya, did you transfer the money?" I shook my head. "Not yet." Kevin's brow furrowed. "Maya, I already spoke with the seller." I looked at him. "When?" "This afternoon. Then I'll transfer it tomorrow." Kevin seahilled. "Okay." Brenda emerged from the living room. "Tomorrow, you need to transfer all of it." Her tone was firm. I looked at her. "Yes." That night, after everyone was asleep, I opened my laptop again. I logged into the joint account. The $30,000 was still there. I transferred another $5,000 to Kevin's account. Just $5,000. I knew this would infuriate Brenda, but I also knew they wouldn't dare make a scene just yet. After the transfer, I sent a text to Kevin. Just sent a little more. I turned off the laptop and lay down. In the living room, I heard Kevin's phone buzz. A moment later, I heard him whispering. He was definitely talking to his mother. Brenda's voice was slightly raised. Even with the door closed, I could faintly hear her. "Why so little? Tell her to transfer all of it. You're too soft." I turned to face the wall and closed my eyes. A strange feeling settled over me. Not pain, not anger, but a cold detachment. It was as if I were standing outside my own marriage, watching it crumble piece by piece. I whispered into the darkness. "Slowly, I won't let you take a single dime." The next morning, the moment I opened my eyes, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Kevin. Very short. "Maya, did you transfer the money yet?" I glanced at the clock. It was only 6:30 a.m. Kevin had never cared about money like this before. In the early years of our marriage, he couldn't even remember how much was in our account. I managed nearly all our household finances, but since his mother came to stay, everything had changed so quickly. I replied simply, "Not yet. I'll do it today." A minute later, Kevin responded, "Transfer all of it." I stared at the words for a few seconds, then turned off my phone. I knew perfectly well that the person pushing for the transfer wasn't Kevin. It was Brenda. When I went out to the living room, Brenda was already awake. She was sitting on the sofa with a hot cup of tea. Seeing me, she immediately asked, "Maya, you're going to the bank today, right?" I nodded. "Yes. Remember to transfer everything." Her voice was soft but firm. I looked at her. "Okay." When Kevin came out, Brenda turned to him. Make sure you remind your wife. Kevin looked uncomfortable. She knows, Mom, Brenda huffed. You can't be slow with money matters. Breakfast that day was tense. No one said much, but I could feel Brenda's eyes following my every move. After eating, I took Lily to preschool. She held my hand. Mommy? Yes. Sweetie, does our new house have a room just for me? I smiled. Yes. And a balcony? I want to plant flowers. I gently stroked her head. Okay. But as I turned to leave the preschool, the smile vanished from my face. I knew that Condo would likely never be her home. I didn't go to the bank. Instead, I went to a small coffee shop downtown. I opened my laptop and logged into our bank account. The joint account had about $25,000 left. The rest was still secure in my personal account. I looked at the number, then opened the transfer screen. I transferred another $2,000 to Kevin's account. Just $2,000. After the transaction was complete, I closed my laptop. I knew this would make Brenda furious, but I wasn't in a hurry. The more they rushed, the more mistakes they would make. I finished my coffee before heading home. The moment I walked through the door, I could feel the change in atmosphere. Brenda was standing in the middle of the living room. Kevin stood beside her. They were both looking at me. I knew what had happened. Kevin held up his phone. Maya, you transferred the money? How much? $2,000. The room fell silent. Brenda was the first to speak, her voice rising in pitch. 2,000? Why so little? I calmly took off my coat. I was busy, so I just sent what I could for now. Brenda walked toward me, her eyes sharp. Maya, what are you doing? I looked at her. I'm transferring the money. Don't play games with me, she said, enunciating each word. You don't want to give us the money, do you? I was silent for a few seconds, then said very softly, If that's what you want to think, you can. My reply left them both stunned. Kevin quickly said, Maya, don't misunderstand. I looked at him. Misunderstand what? Kevin stammered. The money. I just wanted to get it done quickly. I sat down on the sofa. How much do you need? Kevin answered immediately. 300,000. I nodded. You know there isn't enough in the joint account anymore. Kevin froze. Not enough? No. Because I moved most of it to my personal account. The tension in the room snapped taut. Brenda took another step forward. When did you move it? The night before last. I looked her straight in the eye. Because it's my money. Brenda gave a cold laugh. You're married now. Your money is family money. I didn't argue. I just said, but it came from my uncle's inheritance. Brenda was silent for a few seconds, then turned to Kevin. You see? This girl was never sincere from the start. Kevin looked at me, his eyes filled with a kind of disappointment. Maya, I don't think you should have done that, I asked back. Done what? Kept my own money? I smiled faintly. You've been keeping your own money too. Kevin was startled. What? No, I haven't. I looked him straight in the eye. What about all the transfers you've been making to your mother for the past 2 years? The room fell deathly silent. The color drained from Kevin's face. Brenda was also stunned. I knew they never expected me to find out, Kevin stammered. What are you talking about? I took out my phone, opened the banking app, and showed him the transaction history. His account, his mother's account. Every single transfer. Kevin said nothing. Brenda said nothing. The air was as heavy as lead. After a long moment, Brenda finally spoke. That's money my son gave me. I nodded. I'm not saying anything about it. I'm just saying that my money is also my money. Brenda looked at me, her gaze completely different now. All pretense of friendliness gone. Maya, what are you trying to do? I stood up. I'm not trying to do anything. I just want things to be clear. Kevin stepped forward. Maya? We're husband and wife. I looked at him. Right. So we should trust each other. I smiled faintly. Do you trust me, Kevin? He didn't answer. I looked at him for a few seconds, then turned away. I knew this marriage was standing on a precipice. One more step, and everything would shatter. After I showed Kevin the transaction history on my phone, the living room plunged into a heavy silence. Kevin stared at the screen, where each transaction was clearly listed. Date, amount, recipient account. There was nothing to deny. He stood there for a few seconds before slowly placing the phone on the coffee table. I watched him. His eyes showed confusion, but also a hint of resentment. Finally, he spoke, his voice a bit sharp. That was money I gave to my mom. I nodded. I know. So what's your point? I didn't answer immediately. I glanced at Brenda. She was standing with her arms crossed, her expression icy. I spoke calmly. My point is that, whoever's money it is, they have the right to decide what to do with it. Brenda scoffed, a laugh devoid of any humor. What are you implying? Nothing. I just think if Kevin can transfer money to his mother without asking me, then it's perfectly normal for me to keep my own money. That remark made Brenda's face flush with anger. She took a step forward. Maya, are you keeping score with your husband's family? I looked at her. I've never kept score. I just don't want to be taken advantage of. The tension in the room thickened. Kevin sighed. Maya, don't talk like that. I turned to him. Am I wrong? Kevin fell silent. But Brenda did not. She slammed her hand on the table. This girl was never sincere from the start. You see, Kevin? She won't even contribute her money. Kevin frowned. Maya, I think we need to be clear about this. I nodded. Fine. Kevin pulled up a chair and sat down, looking at me. Let me ask you one thing. Go ahead. Do you still consider me your husband? The question took me by surprise, not because it was unexpected, but because I hadn't thought he would be the one to ask it. I looked at him. Do you want the honest answer? Kevin nodded. Yes. I took a deep breath. I used to. The room fell silent again. Brenda immediately spoke up. I turned to her. I used to think we were a family, but now, I'm not so sure. Kevin shot to his feet. Maya! His voice was loud. I looked at him. You wanted me to be honest. I'm being honest. Brenda let out a cold laugh. You hear that, Kevin? This girl never even considered you her husband. I didn't argue. I just said, Brenda, I never said that. But if that's what you want to believe, I can't stop you. Brenda looked at me, her expression completely unveiled now. Maya, you think I don't know what you're doing? I tilted my head slightly. What am I doing? You're trying to hold on to your money. You're afraid we'll take it from you. I smiled faintly. I'm not afraid. I'm just being careful. Brenda laughed loudly. Careful? Careful of who? Of your own mother-in-law? I looked her straight in the eye. I'm careful with anyone. That sent Brenda into a rage. You are so ungrateful. Kevin quickly interjected. Mom. But Brenda didn't stop. When you first came here, who took care of you? This family fed you, gave you a place to live. And now, you're hiding your own money. Hearing that, I felt an urge to laugh. I asked softly, Brenda, who did I come here for? Brenda didn't answer. I turned to Kevin. Do you remember? 5 years ago. What did you say to me? Kevin was silent. I continued. You said you wanted to build a family. You said you would protect me. Kevin avoided my gaze. Brenda cut in. Men say things like that. But money is money. It has to be clear. I nodded. Exactly. Money has to be clear. That's why I'm keeping mine. Kevin sea-hilled. I don't want to fight. I just want to keep things simple. I looked at him. I want things to be simple. 2, then transfer the money. I was silent for a few seconds, then said, no, just one word. but it seemed to freeze the room. Brenda stared at me. "What did you say?" I said I'm not transferring it. My voice was still calm. Kevin stepped forward. "Maya, don't do this." "Why not?" "Because that house is for us." I looked at him. "Are you sure about that?" Kevin froze. "What do you mean?" I didn't answer. I just turned and walked toward the window. It was dark outside now, and the streetlights cast long shadows into the room. I looked down at the street below. Cars moved by as usual. Life out there was continuing, while my family was slowly shattering into pieces. After a long moment, I turned back to Kevin. "Do you really want me to transfer the money?" Kevin nodded. "Yes." I let out a breath. "Fine." Brenda immediately smiled. "But," I continued, "I'll transfer it tomorrow. Before I do, though, there's one thing I want to do first." "What's that?" Kevin asked. I looked at him. "We're going to talk to the lawyer." They both froze. "The lawyer?" Kevin asked. "What for?" I spoke very clearly. "To confirm my legal rights." Brenda immediately objected. "That's not necessary." I turned to her. "Brenda, money has to be clear, right?" Brenda was speechless. And Kevin was silent. I knew the next move in this chess game would decide everything. After I said, "We're going to meet with the lawyer tomorrow," a strange silence descended upon the living room. It wasn't a normal quiet, but a heavy, charged stillness. Like the air before a thunderstorm. Brenda was the first to react. She walked closer to me. "Maya, this is a family matter. Why do we need to bring in lawyers?" Her voice was strained, attempting to sound calm, but with a clear edge of anger. I looked at her. "I don't see anything wrong with it. It's a lot of money. It's good to get a legal opinion." Brenda immediately shook her head. "It's not necessary. We don't have any disputes." I smiled. "Exactly. We don't have any disputes. So there's nothing to worry about from meeting a lawyer." Kevin, standing nearby, looked deeply conflicted. He glanced from his mother to me. Finally, he said, "Maya, I think this is getting too complicated." I asked back. "What's complicated about it?" "We're just talking to a lawyer." Kevin was silent. I looked him straight in the eye, waiting to see which side he would choose. For 5 years of marriage, Kevin had always been in the middle. Never fully on his mother's side, but never truly on mine either. This time, I wanted to know where he stood. After a moment, Kevin said, "All right, we'll see the lawyer tomorrow." His answer made Brenda whip her head around to face him. "Kevin, what are you saying?" Kevin sighed. "Mom, it's just a consultation. It's nothing." Brenda looked at her son, her eyes no longer angry, but worried. She clearly understood that with a lawyer involved, her plan would be much harder to execute. But she didn't say anything more, just let out a soft huff and turned back to her room. The door closed quietly behind her. Now it was just Kevin and me in the room. The air was suddenly still. Kevin looked at me. "Maya, do you really have to do this?" "Do what?" "See a lawyer?" I nodded. "Yes." Kevin sank onto the sofa and rubbed his forehead. "Is it necessary for you to suspect me like this?" That question made me laugh. But there was no joy in it. "You think I'm just suspecting you?" Kevin looked at me. "Aren't you?" I shook my head. "No, I'm not suspecting. I'm just trying to be clear." Kevin sighed. "Maya, I really don't understand why you've changed so much." I was silent for a few seconds, then said, "Do you remember that day at the condo?" Kevin nodded. "Yes." I asked, "Do you remember what your mother said to you?" Kevin froze. "What do you mean?" I looked him straight in the eye for a long moment. Then I said, slowly, "I heard everything that day." Those words made Kevin look as if he'd been turned to stone. "Heard what?" I took out my phone and opened the audio file. I didn't press play right away. I just handed the phone to him. "Listen." Kevin took the phone. I saw his hand was trembling slightly. He pressed the play button, and Brenda's voice filled the quiet room. After the house is bought, find a way to move all the money into my account. After that, you can divorce her whenever you want. It was only a few sentences, but it was enough. Kevin immediately stopped the recording. The color had drained from his face. Maya, I looked at him. I don't understand German, right? That's what your mother said that day. Kevin said nothing. He just looked at me, his eyes wide with shock. I continued. You and your mother thought I didn't understand, so you spoke freely. The room was silent again. But this time the silence was heavier than ever. Kevin sank back onto the sofa, his head in his hands. Maya, his voice was hoarse. I didn't let him finish. You don't need to explain. I've heard enough. He looked up. I wasn't going to do it. I looked at him. You weren't? No. I was just listening to her. I smiled faintly. You said, I understand. Kevin froze. He couldn't deny it. It was on the recording. After a long moment, he said, You're right. I was wrong. It was the first time in many years I had heard Kevin admit he was wrong. But for some reason, I didn't feel any relief. I just felt tired. So tired. I sat down across from him. Kevin, do you know what hurts the most? Kevin shook his head. It's not the money. It's not the house. It was you, standing right next to your mother while she said those things. Kevin lowered his head and said nothing. I continued. You could have said no. You could have told her to stop. But you didn't. A single tear fell. Not from me, but from Kevin. I watched it fall, and a pang of sadness went through me. After all, we had spent 5 years of our lives together, Kevin said quietly. Maya, I don't want to lose you. I looked at him. You're not losing me. You're just finally seeing the real me. He looked up, his eyes filled with confusion. What do you mean? I stood up. We're still going to see the lawyer tomorrow. Kevin nodded. Okay. I looked at him for a moment, then said, But this time, it's not about the house. Kevin frowned. Then what is it about? I answered very calmly. It's about our marriage. That night, after I said, It's about our marriage, the entire apartment was shrouded in a heavy atmosphere. Kevin sat on the sofa for a long time, not saying another word. I didn't speak either. Only the ticking of the wall clock marked the passing moments, each tick so loud it was unnerving. After a while, Kevin stood up and walked over to me. Maya, are you really thinking about divorce? I looked at him. His expression was no longer defiant, just exhausted. I answered very slowly. I haven't said the word divorce. Kevin let out a breath. Then what do you want? I paused for a few seconds before saying, I want to know where you truly stand. Kevin looked at me. I'm your husband. I'm standing right here, he said, gesturing to the floor. I shook my head slightly. No, you're standing in the middle. My words left him unable to respond, because he knew I was right. For the past 5 years, Kevin had always stood between me and his mother. When she complained about me, he wouldn't defend me. But he wouldn't contradict her either. When I was upset, he would just say, Don't pay attention to it. And so things went, until I overheard that conversation. Kevin sat back down, his head bowed. I'm sorry. I said nothing, he continued. I honestly didn't think my mom would go that far. I asked back. You didn't think? Or you didn't want to think? Kevin was silent. After a moment, he said quietly, Maybe I knew. I looked at him. That answer, at least, was honest, he went on. But I just thought she was just talking. I never thought it would get this serious. I smiled faintly. Do you know what hurt the most? He shook his head. It wasn't what your mother said. It was that you didn't object. Kevin clenched his fists. Maya, I was wrong. I didn't reply. Because that apology had come too late. A moment later, the door to the guest room opened. Brenda came out. She must have heard our conversation. She looked directly at me. Maya, what did you make Kevin listen to? I looked at her. Just a recording, Brenda frowned. What recording? I didn't answer. I just played the recording one more time. The room once again filled with her voice. After the house is bought, move the money to my account. Then you can divorce her without any worries. This time, Brenda heard it clearly. Her face changed, her composure gone. She strode forward. You recorded me? I nodded. Yes. You spied on me? I just recorded what I heard. Brenda let out a cold laugh. You really are something else. I looked at her. I never said I was simple. She turned to Kevin. You see? This girl has been plotting against us from the start. Kevin stood up. Mom. His voice was low and firm. That's enough. Brenda froze. It was probably the first time Kevin had ever spoken to her in that tone. She stared at her son. You're defending her? Kevin sighed. I'm not defending anyone. I just want this to stop. But Brenda didn't stop. Stop what? This girl is threatening our family, I said calmly. I'm not threatening anyone. I just want clarity. Brenda looked at me. Clarity? About what? I looked her straight in the eye. About the money, the house, and this marriage, Brenda laughed. You think you have the right to decide any of that? I replied. At the very least, I have a right to my part. The tension in the room ratcheted up again. Kevin stood between us, looking from his mother to me. Finally, he said, We're seeing the lawyer tomorrow, Brenda immediately protested. We don't need to, Kevin shook his head. We do. His voice was firm. Brenda looked at her son, her eyes filled with anger. Whose side are you on? Kevin was silent for a few seconds, then said, I'm on the side of what's right. His answer silenced the room. Brenda stared at Kevin for a long time, then turned to me. Maya, you think doing this means you've won? I shook my head slightly. I don't want to win. I just don't want to lose. Brenda said nothing more. She turned and went back to her room, the door closing with a sharp, final click. Kevin stood there, his shoulders slumped. I looked at him. Do you regret it? Regret what? Kevin asked, telling the truth. I thought for a moment, then answered, No. Kevin nodded. He said very quietly, Maya, whatever the lawyer says tomorrow, I hope we can still be a family. I didn't answer right away. I glanced toward Lily's room. The door was slightly ajar. She was sleeping, her breathing soft and even. I turned back to Kevin, a complex feeling welling up inside me. Family. We once had one, but now everything was at a crossroads. I said slowly. We'll find out tomorrow. The next morning, the apartment was eerily quiet. No one spoke to anyone else. I woke up early as usual and made breakfast for Lily. She was her normal, carefree self, chattering about her day at preschool as she ate. Looking at her innocent face, I felt a mix of warmth and pain. She didn't know anything. She didn't know her parents were standing at a crossroads. Kevin was also up earlier than usual. He ate quickly, barely saying a word. Brenda sat silently in the living room, not looking at me or Kevin. Her face was set like stone. The atmosphere felt like a tightly wound string. The slightest touch would make it snap. After dropping Lily at preschool, Kevin and I drove to the lawyer's office together. We didn't speak on the way. The car passed through familiar streets. The weather was colder than it had been, and fallen leaves skittered across the sidewalk, swept into small eddies by the wind. I stared out the window. 5 years ago, I had sat in this same car, driving down this same road. Back then, I thought my future was clear. A family, a home, a peaceful life. But life rarely follows the path you draw for it. The lawyer's office was in a small brick building downtown. It was the same German-American lawyer we had met before. He invited us to sit. Good morning, Kevin nodded. Good morning. I did the same. The lawyer looked at us for a moment, probably sensing the tension. What can I help you with? Kevin glanced at me, and I knew he wanted me to speak. I placed my bag on the table. We have some questions about the condo purchase. The lawyer nodded. Please, go ahead. I asked very clearly. If the condo title is in my husband's name and I have signed a waiver of property interest, in the event of a divorce, does the property belong entirely to him? The lawyer nodded. That is correct. Kevin sat beside me, his head slightly bowed. I continued. And what if the money for the purchase comes from a joint marital account? The lawyer thought for a moment. Once you have signed the waiver, regardless of the source of the funds, the property legally belongs to your husband. I nodded. Thank you. Kevin looked at me, his eyes filled with anxiety. The lawyer asked, Is there anything else? I have one more question, I said. Please, if I no longer wish to transfer funds for the purchase of this condo, what happens to the purchase agreement? The lawyer opened a file and flipped through a few pages. The earnest money deposit of $20,000 would be forfeited. Kevin immediately turned to me. Maya. His voice was a whisper. I looked at him. Yes? What are you thinking? I didn't answer him directly. I turned to the lawyer. Thank you, sir. We understand. We left the lawyer's office. As we stepped out of the building, Kevin stopped on the top step. Maya, are you going to cancel the purchase? I looked at him. What do you think? Kevin was silent for a few seconds, then said, I think you're doing this because you're angry. I smiled faintly. You think I'm just angry? Kevin looked at me. I don't know. I walked down the steps. Kevin. It was the first time in a long time I had said his name like that. Not a casual Kev, but a formal Kevin. The distance in the word was palpable. He noticed. He looked at me. Maya? I spoke slowly. Do you remember our wedding day? Kevin nodded. I remember. You said something to me. What? You said family is a place where you don't have to be on guard. Kevin looked down. I continued. But in this family, I have always had to be on guard. A gust of wind blew past, sending dry leaves skittering across the pavement. Kevin stood there for a long time before he spoke. Maya, if I said I want to make it right, would you believe me? I looked at him. His eyes were sincere. But I had learned that sincerity isn't always enough. I said, I don't know. Kevin sighed. I know I was wrong. I stood in the middle for too long. I said nothing, he continued. But I don't want to lose you. I looked at him. Are you afraid of losing me? Or are you afraid of losing the money? Kevin froze. Maya. I shook my head slightly. I'm not saying that to hurt you. I just want to know the truth. Kevin was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, I'm afraid of losing our family. I looked at him. This time, I didn't smile or argue. I just said, You can't have a family just by saying you want one. We stood there for a few more minutes, neither of us speaking. Finally, I said, You should go home. I'm going to pick up Lily. Kevin nodded. He turned and walked away, his steps heavy. I watched him go, feeling an immense wave of exhaustion wash over me. This marriage had reached its end. There was just one step left. After Kevin left, I remained standing in front of the lawyer's building for a long time. The early winter air was colder than I'd realized, the wind tugging at my collar, but I didn't feel it. Kevin's words echoed in my mind. I'm afraid of losing our family. Family. Those two words had once meant everything to me. After my parents died, I always dreamed that if I ever had a family of my own, I would hold on to it with everything I had. I used to believe that if I just endured a little, was a little more forgiving, everything would be okay. But the past 5 years had taught me a simple lesson. A family cannot survive on the efforts of just one person. I let out a long breath and hailed a cab to pick up Lily. The preschool was on a quiet street. When I walked in, she was sitting with a few other children, drawing. As soon as she saw me, Lily ran over. Mommy! I bent down and hugged her. I'm here. Sweetie, she held up a piece of paper. Look! Mommy! I looked at the drawing. A small house, a tree. 3 people stood in front of the door. She pointed to each figure. This is Mommy. This is me. And this is Daddy. My heart clenched. I asked softly, "Where did you draw, Daddy?" She pointed to the man in the picture. Right here. Daddy is smiling. I looked at the drawing. A child's sketch is simple, but the smile on the father's face was colored in dark and bold. I gently stroked her hair. It's beautiful. On the way home, Lily held my hand. Mommy? Yes, honey. When are we going to live in the new house? I was silent for a few seconds, then said, We might not live there. She looked up at me. Why not? I smiled. Because sometimes, a home isn't the biggest place. A home is the place where you feel the safest. She didn't fully understand, but she nodded. Anywhere with you is home, Mommy. Her innocent words made my eyes sting. When we got home, the front door was open. Kevin was sitting on the sofa. He looked up when he saw me, his eyes weary. Brenda was there too, her expression as cold as the day before. No one spoke for a few seconds. Lily ran over. Daddy! Kevin immediately picked her up. Was Lily a good girl at school? Yes! I drew a picture! She handed the drawing to Kevin. He stared at it for a long time before he said, It's beautiful. I stood by the door, watching the scene. A family, a father, a child. From the outside, it looked perfectly normal. But only we knew how fractured it was on the inside. Brenda spoke first. Maya, what did the lawyer say? I set my bag down. He said if I don't transfer the money, we'll lose the deposit. Brenda frowned. Lose $20,000? She looked at Kevin. You see? We're losing money because of her. I didn't react. I just said, I haven't made a decision yet. Brenda laughed coldly. What's there to decide? You're planning to cancel it, aren't you? I looked at her. Maybe? Brenda shot to her feet. Are you crazy? That condo is such a good deal, and now you want to throw it away? Kevin put Lily down. Lily, why don't you go play in your room? The little girl nodded and ran off. The door closed behind her. In the living room, there were only 3 adults, and the atmosphere was instantly suffocating. Kevin looked at me. Maya, do you really want to cancel the purchase? I asked back. Do you really want to buy that house? Kevin was silent. I continued. Even if it means buying it with a wife who no longer trusts you? Kevin clenched his fists. Maya, Brenda cut in. What is that supposed to mean? I turned to her. I think you know, Brenda. Brenda laughed coldly. You think you've won just because you have that recording? I shook my head slightly. I never thought about winning. I just don't want to lose. Brenda stared at me for a long time, then said, Maya, if you don't want to live here anymore, you can leave. That sentence made Kevin whip his head around. Mom! But Brenda kept her eyes on me. This house belongs to my son. If you don't like it, then don't stay. I was silent. I wasn't surprised. In fact, I had been waiting for her to say that for a long time. Kevin stood up. Mom, don't talk like that. But Brenda didn't stop. Why are you defending her? This girl never considered us family from the start. I looked at her and said very softly, Maybe you're right. Both of them froze. I continued. Maybe I never really belonged to this family from the start. Kevin stepped forward. Maya. I looked at him. I'm not saying that to blame you. I'm just telling the truth. A long silence stretched between us. Finally, I said, I will make my decision tomorrow. That night, after I said, I will make my decision tomorrow, no one in the apartment slept well. I know, because I didn't sleep a wink myself. Kevin lay beside me, his back turned to me. He barely moved all night. Once, I heard him let out a very soft sigh. In the dark room, I stared up at the ceiling. 5 years of marriage. I remembered the early days when I followed Kevin here. A tiny apartment, an old electric stove. The two of us eating instant ramen at the end of the month because we were still figuring out our budget. We were truly happy then. We had little money, but no schemes. Later, as life got better, the simplest things started to disappear. I don't know when they vanished. Maybe it was when my mother-in-law started staying with us. Maybe it was when the balance in our bank account grew. Or maybe it was when Kevin started staying silent in the face of his mother's words. The next morning, I woke up very early. While it was still dark, I went to the kitchen and made breakfast for Lily. She ran out, her hair still messy. "Mommy, I'm hungry," I smiled. "Sit down, sweetie." Kevin also came out of the bedroom. He looked at me for a few seconds. "Maya, have you decided?" I nodded. "Yes." Kevin didn't ask anything else. Just then, Brenda emerged from her room. She looked at me. "What's the decision?" I placed a bowl of oatmeal in front of Lily, then turned to her. "I'm not transferring the money." The room was silent. Brenda immediately said, "So, what are you going to do?" I looked at her. "I'm canceling the condo purchase." Brenda laughed. "You're insane! We'll lose the $20,000 deposit." I nodded. "I know. I accept that." Brenda turned to Kevin. "You see? This girl is destroying our family." Kevin didn't reply. He just looked at me. "Maya, are you sure?" I nodded. "Yes. Money can be earned back. Trust, once it's lost, cannot." Kevin was silent. After a moment, he asked, "And what about us?" I looked at him. "What do you want?" Kevin lowered his head. After a long pause, he finally said, "I want to keep our family." Hearing that, a strange feeling washed over me. Not joy, not sadness, just a sense of relief. I asked, "Do you want to keep it? Or do you want to change it?" Kevin looked up at me. "I want to change it," Brenda immediately protested. "Kevin, don't say that! This girl is forcing you!" Kevin turned to his mother. For the first time in years, I saw a hardness in his eyes. "Mom, I'm not being forced. I'm just finally understanding." Brenda froze. "Kevin, you," he continued. I was wrong. I stood in the middle for too long. I thought that was keeping the peace. But really, I was just making everything worse. Brenda stared at her son, her face a mask of anger and disappointment. "You're taking her side," Kevin shook his head. "I'm not taking anyone's side. I just don't want this family to be built on lies anymore." The room fell silent again. I looked at Kevin. In his eyes this time, I saw something that had been rare before. Resolve. He turned to me. "Maya, I'll make it clear. Your money is your money. I have no right to it. If you don't want to buy that condo, we won't buy it," I asked. "And your mother?" Kevin was silent for a few seconds, then said, "A son should be dutiful, but not at the expense of his own wife." Brenda stood there, speechless, her face a mixture of fury and shock. After a moment, she turned and went back to her room. The door closed, not with a slam, but with a quiet, final click. In the living room, it was just me, Kevin, and Lily. Our daughter didn't understand what was happening. She just sat there eating her oatmeal, occasionally looking between us. Kevin sat down. He looked at me. "Maya, I can't promise that everything will be perfect right away. But I want to try again." I was silent. Part of me wanted to believe him, but another part was deeply cautious. Finally, I said, "We don't need to rush. But there's one thing you have to remember." Kevin nodded. "Tell me." I looked at him. "A family shouldn't be a place where you have to be on guard, but it's also not a place where you can hurt each other without consequences." Kevin nodded. "I understand." Just then, Lily held up the drawing from yesterday. "Mommy." I drew it again. I looked at the paper. The house, the tree, the three people standing in front. But this time, there was a new, small detail. A single flower in front of the porch. "I planted a flower," she said. I smiled. It's beautiful. Kevin smiled too. A very faint, fragile smile. Outside the window, the morning sun began to stream into the living room. I didn't know what the future held. Maybe we would make it. Maybe, one day, we would still go our separate ways. But at least this time, we were starting from a place of truth. And sometimes, that's the most important thing of all. When you finish a story like this, I'm sure many of us feel a sense of familiar recognition. Not everyone finds themselves in a situation as dramatic as Maya's, but that feeling of being caught between love, family, and financial calculation is a story that plays out in countless homes. As an outside observer looking at this entire chain of events, I have to say that Maya wasn't some kind of hardened cynic from the start. For years, she was patient, she was trusting, and she held on to the hope that if she just gave a little more and endured a little more, her family would find its peace. But there is a fundamental line in every human relationship, and that line is trust. The moment trust is monetized, the moment it's put on a spreadsheet of gains and losses, everything changes. Here, the conflict wasn't just about the money. The money was merely the catalyst. The truly heartbreaking part of this story is a wife accidentally overhearing a calculated plot from the two people she should have been able to trust the most: her husband and his mother. When the bonds of marriage are weighed against bank accounts and property deeds, no matter how beautiful the condo is, it can never be a home. As for Kevin, I think his character is a lesson that many men in the real world are still learning. It's the classic struggle of being caught between one's wife and one's mother. Many men believe that staying neutral, standing in the middle, is the way to keep the peace. But it isn't. When a man stays silent in the face of an injustice being done to his wife, that silence can be more damaging than any angry word. A family cannot be sustained by avoidance. It requires clarity, respect, and the courage to stand up for what is right. And for Brenda, perhaps she truly believed she was just looking out for her son's future. But there's a truth that many parents sometimes forget. Once their child builds a family of their own, their spouse is not an outsider. They are the new inner circle. If you constantly treat your daughter-in-law as someone to be managed and guarded against, you will eventually poison the very family you claim to be protecting. For Maya, my advice would be simple. She did the right thing by maintaining her composure and not letting her emotions dictate her actions. But moving forward, the most important thing is not about winning or losing a single conflict. It's about knowing what you deserve. A woman can be forgiving, but she should never be asked to sacrifice her self-respect. And for everyone listening to this story, if you are in a relationship, remember this: trust is the most valuable currency a family has. Money can be earned back, houses can be bought and sold. But once trust is shattered, the work of gluing the pieces back together is incredibly difficult. If this story made you think, or if you've ever experienced something similar, please share your thoughts. You never know, your story might help someone else see their own path a little more clearly. And if you appreciate these kinds of true-to-life stories, where every character reflects a part of our own world, be sure to follow our channel as we continue to listen, reflect, and learn meaningful lessons from the seemingly ordinary dramas of everyday life.